Now, typically when franchises, specifically video game franchises, get to their third entry, they tend to teeter or peter out a little bit. You know, they get to the point where they've lost the luster of, you know, the initial game and then the improvements made in the second. And by the third, it's just not even a shell. It's kind of like a what the hell have you become type of situation. And that's unfortunately what happened with Streets of Rage and also Double Dragon and Final Fight and many other franchises. 26 years later, we finally have Streets of Rage 4. And it's unusual for the fourth entry to rectify all of the sins of the previous. But this one, I'm gonna spoil it for you guys right now. Streets of Rage 4 knocks it out of the park. Such a good game. I love Streets of Rage 4, and you know, it's a game you need. I don't care whether you're a fan of the franchise or you're just new to games or you're a modern gamer, you need this game. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and do the review. I've already rambled a little bit too long. We're gonna do the review, get into why you need it, why it's amazing. And with that being said, I'm Mekel, Kasanova, Hawaii's favorite YouTuber, host of the #1 podcast in the state of Hawaii, the Kasanova Podcast. I stream every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and occasionally on Sunday, both on YouTube and on Twitch. If you want to check those out, links are down below. And my Discord group with an amazing bunch of, you know, content creators, people from the video game industry and more, they're there. So if you want to join, link for that is also there. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and get into it and see why you need this game. Roll the intro. As an 80s kid growing up in the 90s, one of the most favorite of my pastimes was hitting the arcades to drop quarters into the newest and most hyped games that came out. And back then we had so many to choose from, with the Double Dragon series, which kicked off the beat 'em up genre, to Final Fight, which perfected the formula, to the still spectacular to this day Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time, and X-Men the arcade game, and more. And yet we never experienced that level of greatness at home on console until 1991's Streets of Rage. For those who do not know, Streets of Rage was inspired by both Final Fight and the movie Streets of Fire, and was made by Sega due to Nintendo having their exclusivity deals with Capcom with certain titles and franchises. And since the Sega Genesis or the Mega Drive elsewhere in the world didn't have that killer app beat 'em up, Sega decided to step up to the plate and make their own. While it may have initially been an inspired clone of Final Fight and Double Dragon, eventually with the following two sequels, Streets of Rage turned into a franchise all of its own that it even had Capcom hustling to compete with it, especially after the magnum opus that is Streets of Rage 2, which continues to be considered the greatest brawler and beat 'em up of all time. And it's been 26 years since the critically panned Streets of Rage 3 came out on the Sega Genesis, and after near 3 decades of waiting, we finally have Streets of Rage 4 on all platforms, and with a question that many are wondering of if it lives up to the legacy of the franchise, or does it even exceed it, or does it fail as many returning franchises do, such as Double Dragon 4? We can only find this answer on the Streets of Rage. Now, the story of Streets of Rage 4 takes place 10 years after 3 and the fall of Mr. X and the Syndicate, with the streets being safe and the corruption being done. Streets of Rage 4 follows the continuity of Bare Knuckle 3 and not Streets of Rage 3, which had an altered non-canonical plot and was released in the West for some odd reason, maybe due to Blockbuster and Hollywood Video being the prevalent way of renting games, and they wanted to make games harder to combat renting games because in Japan that was illegal to do back then. But with that being said, it is what it is. In that 10-year gap, main characters Axel, Adam, Blaze, Skate, Max, and Dr. Zahn have all moved on with their lives to some extent or another. Axel left the force and moved away from the city to seek true strength and become a better warrior, echoing many of Ryu of Street Fighter's pursuits. Blaze also leaving the force as well. She left due to refusing to take anger management classes after attacking the police commissioner, and went on to become a dance instructor who still has a penchant for wanting to get into fights in the streets. Adam Hunter went on to become a decorated career officer and went on to join a special forces unit that he currently serves in, with his younger brother Skate going on to become a college student and his daughter Cherry growing up to become a high school student who is in a metal band. Dr. Zahn is now helping individuals such as one of the new main characters, Floyd, gain new cybernetic arms to replace the ones that he lost from a construction incident. And in the wake of the fall of the Syndicate and Mr. X's demise, there's arisen a new criminal syndicate composed of the remnants of the previous group and are led by twin crime bosses known as Mr. Y and Miss Y, who are the children of the previous villain. They have near complete control of the city, from the police force to the everyday thugs, food and music industry, and more. They have developed a technology to brainwash and control anyone that they wish, and are the greatest threat that Wood Oak City, yes, the city is named in this entry finally, has ever faced. With this new threat looming, our heroes must once again answer the call to justice and take the fight back to the streets and save the city once again. If you are a series veteran who played the previous 3 entries, Final Fight series, or any beat 'em up in general, then you will feel at home here, as this game plays and feels superb. If you want to compare this, then I would compare it to the previous 3 entries. It's basically a souped up Streets of Rage 2, to be quite honest, as it plays speed-wise the closest to it, along with having its gameplay system reverted back to it. And when I say reverted back, it means that it doesn't include the ability to run or to dodge, roll up and down like you could in 3. And weapons do a nice amount of damage to you and to the enemies, with a large variety to choose from. You have your buttons for attack, jump, grab items, special attack, back attack, and combination inputs for a new screen nuke-like attack being the special attack plus grab item, which allows you to do an area radius attack. And with Axel gaining Cody Travers' criminal upper or criminal punisher, Blaze gains a new chi-based levitation attack similar to Rose's super from Street Fighter Alpha and 4, and Adam gains Terry Bogart's Power Gazer, with Cherry also getting an attack which is similar to a Rolling Thunder style move into a guitar slam, and Floyd gets an Iron Man inspired proton cannon beamwave from Marvel vs. Capcom and Marvel vs. Capcom 2. These techniques utilize 1 star each and act similar to the first game's screen nukes, which in those would summon a police car, which more on that later, that would show up and clear the screen and would need you to pick up a police car item to replenish or die and respawn to use it again. In Streets of Rage 4, you can find stars hidden throughout levels and be able to pick up items to replenish this ability, and you can stack them as they don't cost you your life bars the way that special attacks do. Special attacks operate the same way they did in 2 and 3, with one difference being the ability to utilize them in mid-air. Axel will be able to do a rolling flame attack into a flaming straight punch, while Blaze will pull off a blue flying jump kick, and Adam performs an aerial Tatsumaki or tornado kick. While Streets of Rage 2 and 3 had a combo system in them, Streets of Rage 4 took that to a new level and added in not only a free-flowing combo system, but also the ability to juggle enemies from throws to wall bounces and more. And the only limits that you have are your own, as you can combo and juggle into anything, and especially if you play co-op and work together, with or without friendly fire being on. Your combos are counted similar to how they are in games like Fight and Rage, and honestly the closest comparison I have to Streets of Rage 4 is Fight and Rage, which was heavily an inspiration for this new entry. The game has your standard co-op 2-player mode with both local couch co-op and online, which is something I've been begging to be included in modern beat 'em ups, and a new feature which is just as awesome being a series first with 4-player co-op. This is limited to local offline only, but hopefully in the future they can patch in 4-player online, as the replayability in this game is insane. There are 12 missions in this game as opposed to the previous entries only having 7 to 8 missions, and just when you think the game is going to end, it continues onward with some of the best designed levels in a brawler I've ever seen. The levels, especially the first level, is a callback to the first levels of Streets of Rage 1 and 2 in design and aesthetics, and even its theme as well, yet not long after that, it evolves into its own style and becomes an even better level layout. All the levels feel unique and original, and one never feels like a rehash of a previous level, with all of them paying homage to the levels of the original trilogy, with special cameos of characters like Rue in the bar and so much more. The enemies and bosses never feel cheap or annoying, or have that terrible rubber band effect that other games in the genre do, as each one has a unique strategy and approach, and once you learn the patterns and how they react to you, then you'll be good to go, even if you decide to play on Mania mode. One of the bosses has a special screen nuke style attack, or rather desperation attack, which is a callback to the original Streets of Rage. Remember when I told you to stay tuned for that a little bit later? Well, here it is, where she calls in a squad car to fire a missile at the player. It's such a great callback to the original, and honestly, each of the new bosses has a unique style as well, and pose quite the challenge, but are fun to fight and figure out their tactics. Last thing I want to bring on and speak on is the unlockables, as this game has tons of unlockable characters to choose from. Aside from the starting 4 characters, as you can unlock Adam after playing a few stages, and more characters including playable versions of every previous playable character from the franchise, giving you more reason to play through the game's story mode as well as arcade and online modes. Okay, so I've talked at length about the gameplay, but what about the presentation and graphics? Well, I have to be honest, when I first saw the reveal of what Streets of Rage 4 was going to look like, I was honestly immediately turned off, as I assumed it was going the way of the art style that Battletoads was going, and I didn't like it, and I also felt that it didn't fit the grimy aesthetics of the franchise. I didn't feel like I was in the streets brawling for my life. I viewed it as being the Double Dragon neon effect on a franchise that I grew up with, and I initially hated it and wished it looked more like the indie-inspired The Takeover, which I felt was visually the way Streets of Rage 4 should have looked like. But to be honest, this art style grew on me, and after playing it and seeing it in motion, I honestly came to love it. The way that all the characters are hand-drawn and animated brings them to life in a way that I never could have envisioned the series to look before. And Axel, who initially looked really out of place and fat to me, initially now looks as he should, as a man who's lived in the wilderness and consistently been training for 10 years, as he is no longer lean fit, but dirty bulk muscle bound, as in I train on the edge of life and death, Team No Neck Bobby Lashley style. And Blaze looks even sexier than she did before, and went from looking 80s hairband generic to looking more sensual and sultry. The biggest change of all for me was seeing how Adam looks, as he looks like a boss with his short hair, modernized take on his classic hairstyle, and a V-neck yellow t-shirt with black pants and black overall straps with shades. The man is stylish while kicking tons of ass. The returning enemies from Shiva to Barbun to Big Ben and more all look and animate so well in this modernized style that I'm absolutely in love with how this looks. The new enemies fit in so well with the world of Streets of Rage, and absolutely no one looks out of place, not even the last half of the final boss. The levels themselves come to life in this new art style with bloom effects and lighting, along with particles and more, and it just looks alive, and it's what I feel that the creators of the original envisioned Streets of Rage should look like when they wanted to make it. And I just feel like back then they were just so limited due to the limitations of the hardware, whereas now they were able to just creatively go out and go balls to walls with what they wanted to envision. As stated earlier, the first level is such a love letter to the first level of both Streets of Rage 1 and 2, as it faithfully meshes the two together and brings them to life with its own unique evolution and identity. Okay, so I can just say this, The OST slaps, and it slaps hard. Every track on this game, from the opening level to the final level, hits so hard that you might find yourself putting down the controller just to get up and dance to how absolutely amazing it is. I'm not sure what Yuzo Koshiro was doing on Streets of Rage 3's soundtrack with how experimental the game's OST was, but man, did he come back with a roaring vengeance on this game's OST. There is not one bad track at all on this game. Oh, and there's voice acting too, albeit it's incredibly limited voice acting, as in only when you select your character, and then they'll speak briefly, and honestly, that's it. But on the bright side, they all sound how I envisioned that they would nearly 30 years ago. And when you hit or get hit by enemies, no matter what it is, be it fist or weapon, they all sound meaty and weighty with that thunderous oomph sound. Explosions, gunshots, electricity, and machines all sound spot on and have that crunch that you'd expect and love. And here we go. This is the downsides. You guys know I always segment out in every review the downsides. And with as much praise as I've given this game, I can only speak on a few things that left me wanting more. And that's mainly the lack of full voiceover for the intro and cutscenes, as well as the lack of additions made to Streets of Rage 3 that allowed you to dodge up and down as well as run. But in that instance, I can understand that by adding those back in, that would speed up the flow of this game's style and potentially upset the perfect level of game balance that it already has here. I honestly can't understand why the game doesn't feature full-on voice acting for the intro and cutscenes and the ending, as this could have benefited from it, as it works wonders, especially when you look at games like The Takeover that utilize it in the opening and cutscenes and ending. The other downsides, and this is more of a nitpick more than a downside, is I don't understand why 4-player co-op is limited to local couch co-op and not included in the online. As I said, that's honestly a minor nitpick, but it's something I would have loved to have had in the game. But I do feel that this is something that they can add later on with a balanced patch update. And, you know, franchises from the 80s, the 90s, they don't usually make it to a fourth installment. And if they do, they usually fall face first on the third outing. But Streets of Rage has returned to its glory after the mishap that was Streets of Rage 3 into this love letter to the franchise that fans such as myself, you know, and even people who are new, modern gamers can grow to fall in love with the franchise. With 12 levels, a large roster of diverse characters to choose from, a spectacular art style, a boatload of unlockables, local and online co-op, and a soundtrack that slaps. Streets of Rage 4 is a must-own game for 2020. Or whether you're a series vet or you're looking for something new, this game needs to be in your collection. With that being said, that's it. That's the review. That is Streets of Rage 4. Oh my God. Special shout out and thank you to Dotemu and LizardQ for sending me a review code. I covered the Steam version. It's also available on Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One, which I currently now have it on those platforms as well. So I'm going to be doing community streams, and if you want to play the game with me, hey, let me know in the comment section. Let me know in the Discord. Let's get some online co-op going. And you know, I'm just so very grateful that this game is out and that people are going to be able to experience something that I grew up with and I've waited 26 years for a sequel to. And I'm just so excited. I absolutely love this game. I love what they've done to modernize it and bring it into modern times. And like I admitted in the review, I wasn't a fan of the way this game looked. Like initially, I thought it just looked off with Axel. I thought he looked a little too dirty bulk, you know, muscle just chunky, but then playing it, seeing it in motion, and then getting to see the bios and understand what has happened in the last 10 years canonically within the game to now, and understanding why the characters look the way they do, it makes perfect sense. And the art style and motion both and still look really phenomenal and have grown on me, and I've come to love it. So again, thank you to LizardCube and .emu for the review code. And I look to see what they're gonna do with this, if they're gonna have DLC, if they're gonna add 4-player online co-op and more, because I think this is everything I've ever wanted in a brawler made real, and it's just awesome. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed it, make sure you hit the like button, share it with someone who you think might enjoy it as well. And also, if you want to join our Discord, like I said, links are down below. It's free for anyone to hop in. We have an amazing group of content creators, gaming industry people, as well as other people who are just fans of gaming, tech, anime, and more. And I stream every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and on Sundays on YouTube and on Twitch, so check me out there. And if you want to support the content, the channel, whatever you feel like, if you want to invest into me, which I reinvest into the channel, I have Patreon as well as channel memberships, and everything just goes into making this channel even glorious. With that being said, I'm ready to close this out because I want to get back to playing Streets of Rage, and thank you guys for coming here. And with that being said, deuces well, too sweet, be the elite. Play Streets of Rage 4. Please pick this game up, because this is what we need more of when we're gonna bring back franchises that have been long dormant. Streets of Rage 4 is what Double Dragon Force should have been 3 years ago. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching. I'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace out. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Congratulations. And since you made it here, why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Like the video if you enjoyed it. You can always check out MekelKasanova.com. If you want to support the content, we've got Patreon, as well as channel memberships and super chats. And with that being said, this is Mekel Kasanova. I enjoy you guys. I hope you have a great one. Mahalo, and see you next time.